Yeah,
I tell people all the time, Dr. T, is it's that old expression, you know, with the rat says, forget the cheese, just get me out of the trap.
yeah, right.
Yeah. And when I saw assumption 3, what I see in this, doctor, is that assumption 3
Yes.
is where I think most of us like to be at. You said earlier in the beginning of the presentation that this is where a lot of us seem to fall into.
Yeah, I do agree. I think, you know, no one likes to have or feel uncomfortable mentally, and too much information too quickly does that to us. It
Yeah.
keeps us up at night and everything else. And we strive. I mean, whether we use, you know, someone uses drugs, alcohol, whatever, or religion, or any, and I'm not going anywhere else with that. I'm just saying people have different ways of understanding, gaining information, controlling their emotions, meditation, for instance, to fix how they feel and to understand how their beliefs are within that culture, or in the culture as a whole. The whole, in our case, we're talking Earth
Yeah.
block.
It's all of us.
Yes, it's all exactly.
Well, I want to go back to the fix how they feel too, but when they resolve the dissonance, the thing that I'm seeing in a broad audience of people that have noticed changes in the Earth, in the solar system, you know, people that are typically a little more geeky, right, doctor?
Yes.
There's a profile. They're a little bit more interested in science than other people, a little more interested in astronomy and watching the sky and weather and all those things, right? And these people notice, and then they seem to gravitate to whatever that cultural mores or bias is, and it seems like they even hold on to it tighter. And that, to me, is the recipe for conflict.
It is, right? And I used to be like that. I can say that I used to really fight, my experiences. And one of those reasons, as a scientist, I was in experimental in nature. I was taught that you can't trust your perceptions, and a lot of what we see until we collect the data. Like for you guys, the other night you were talking about some atmospheric chemicals that we have in the atmosphere at certain places in this country. But until you collect that data, you don't know what's there. You may see these different effects, but we have no idea. And so as a scientist, I was trying to doubt my perceptions.
You know, you just brought up a good thought there, Dr. T, when I was just thinking on what I know that show you were talking about. So you as a doctor who understands the mind and also have an understanding of pharmaceuticals, when we have now begun to see more and more evidence showing that there is lithium being injected into our atmosphere, which means if it's in the atmosphere, it means eventually all humans, all life forms will eventually absorb it. Can you give our audience a little more understanding of your understanding of what lithium does in the practice of better mental health?
I'll be careful in this case.
Yeah, I understand. It's a sensitive subject.
Very. But you know what? We have known about lithium's role in bettering mental health for probably over 50 years. And, we may not have a perfect idea. I mean, lithium is a salt. And, you have sodium salt that you take and it affects your heart. You have lithium salt that you take and it affects the nerves. It's a kind of a neuromodulator. It modulates the firing rate. What that means inside the brain is not perfectly known. And I'm not quite clear on how much. So if I took lithium as a tablet, a gram of it or something, well, I would have a good understanding for what happened to me. And as it turns out, it doesn't have as much of a massive, sleepy effect as one might assume. But I don't understand how much is up in that atmosphere. And it is a strange concern that there's lithium, period.
It is. And, I dated back in my past a person who, she was on lithium and she was bipolar. And while she was on the medication, just a wonderful relationship. But if there was any interruption to that, that was a different person.
Yes.
So when I began to learn about this, I had contracted spinal meningitis with Lyme disease. And when I came out of the coma, my neurologist was very concerned that they didn't want to get me upset because it could cause a cascading effect. And I just find it odd that when we talk about particular chemical compounds, and that if this is in fact true, I am a layman, and I'll just say that. But something inside of me instinctively says, "Danger, Will Robinson." It's kind of that situation.
Yeah, I can understand that, right? I mean, you shouldn't have it up there, and we know that certain things. I mean, maybe we should have it up there. I don't know.
Who knows? Yeah, but it's a very interesting. So when we get back to this, I saw particularly on slide 3, and when we talk about the fact that 3A seems to be the most for all of us, and then you go to slide 4, again, it comes back to point 3 right there. People are going to rationalize as needed till the evidence fits their views. I mean, that is phenomenal. If I could just simply put that in every one of our videos, I think that half of the comments negatively would go away.
I want to make a T-shirt that says that.
Right.
I think we're going to give Dr. T the royalties.
Yes, the bumper sticker.
Yeah, exactly.
But well, I mean, that's what we do. I mean, that's kind of at least our culture is set up to rationalize until it fits, and we're taught that at such a young age to, when you hit this and it does that, or you push this thing over and it does, or you hit that switch and it does something else. I mean, those are simple things, but we really, when it comes to behavior, we do lots of rationalizations. We sit around and talk about each other's behavior left and right, why someone's doing such and such to so-and-so, and why they might be doing it. I mean, we speculate tremendously in this culture, and it would be wonderful if we stop speculating, but that's not going to happen. But we do take any data that comes in, and even if it makes sense, it always takes actually, I want to go a little bit further with this thought. As a society, we are, for the last 20 years, I would say, are presented regularly this kind of idea, whether it's through TV, movies, etc., that something can be solved in 30 minutes. And if it can't be, then we rationalize it out for, whatever, half our life. We need to realize that things take a long time, that we need to, if we are going to change a belief, we need to slowly do so it's not dramatic, and look at all the look at the balance on both sides. What is the doctor saying to me? What is this person talking to me about? Whatever the case may be, the data as it comes into our minds, to reduce that dissonance, do so slowly, look at the balanced picture, and do so until it kind of fits what's actually your experience is. So.
I'll give you an example, Doctor, of something I'm personally going through, and that is Wayne today shared with me the mass animal die-off fact. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
And the accelerating mass animal die-off, and then we did what we do. We connected some dots together, and it was an interesting, interview and discussion, but it left me, I had no idea that we were facing such a dramatic extinction level event, and that we're already in the middle of it right now. And could you just kind of, that is just disturbing to me. And then if I thought about it, how many people in the United States would even have any idea that that was happening? And what would that do to them if everybody knew it was happening?
Right. I'm just thinking as you were saying that, I haven't seen, if you made an episode, I haven't seen it yet. But I'm thinking back to when, I don't know if it was in the Netherlands, or when they had that kind of thunderstorm came in, or
oh yeah, and wiped out all the antelope.
The antelope or the deer, whatever.
Yeah, whatever they were. Yep.
Yeah, I was shocked. That had never occurred to me, that whatever happened, and I don't know, but for that one instance, you just annihilated 300 or plus animal, and it was awful feeling. It was, so Well, you know,
Oh no, like the one I'm charged up about is like losing 135,000, reindeer or whatever, whatever antelope in Siberia. These are huge numbers.
Yeah, they are, and I just don't have a good sense. But you're right. So when this is going on, I mean, that means if we're going to confront that issue, why is it happening? It's going to create a lot of dissonance and some energy to take to confront it. And people this is part of that kind of being an active participant in your life. Once you realize this is going on, you're either going to want to follow up and see why it's happening, which is probably what we should do, or you're not, and you're going to rationalize out, well, I don't have the time to do so. I'm focused on this other thing. But there's some great concern for what's happening in several different animal populations across the earth. And why it's happening, like the honeybees, for instance. What is going on there? Why, it takes a lot of time though to rationalize. It's not very clear, and we have to do so quickly, or before we have a big problem, a larger one that we might not understand. But there's so much data that we have to pour through, and it's not an easy task. So.
Wayne actually distilled all the, not to get off on a tangent, but the,
Yes.
kind of the mass animal die-off information, distilled it, did all the research. We'll be posting that up on the Steiger Olson channel. But also, I'm just telling you, it's a lot to take in, doctor. I get it. And one of the things I feel most empathetic, I guess, to our audience, is that this is a lot of change to pull somebody through.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And we're not trying to scare you. We're just trying to point out certain things so that you can make rational adult decisions about what you're going to do. I mean, that's it.
You bring up a good point, though, Steve. And Doctor, I was curious. I just wrote my question out to you on this one. When we get accused a lot of times of being fear mongers, pushing fear porn, you hear that now quite often.
Yeah.
Could you give us a clinical definition of what fear does to the human psyche? I mean, I've heard that we are, as a species, are addicted to fear because it relieves a certain amount of adrenaline, release a number of endorphins that begin to impact us. Is there any basis to that, of any truth at all?
Yeah, I'm sure there is. And I'm not sure though that I'm the one who knows that answer, but I do see this in adolescents and individuals with special situations, special needs, that there might be some sort of injurious behavior that they engage in order that relieves some sort of arousal, some sort of something, and that's a very specific example. But
yeah.
The idea that you're asking about, it does. I don't know why are we so interested in horror movies and all the other,
Well, I can tell you, as a young man, I was into rappelling. You know why? I loved jumping over the side of cliffs?
I can't imagine.
It was the thrill of possibly dying.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, and I remember I did a lot of spelunking, and I got caught in I didn't know that on top there was a thunderstorm taking place, and when the water started filtering in, I got caught in a passageway where the water started coming up to my lip, and that was cognitive dissonance.
Yeah,
I told you, but to get to my point is that when we think about Nibiru, it's tied to either science or it's tied to where we see with religion, right? And we begin to think about the prophecy side, and you always see that the fact that people, the curiosity, and then when it starts to frighten them, that's where I see things coming back and going, okay, what do we do?
Right. Yeah, and it is, right? So it's so tied to our cultural beliefs in terms of religion, our beliefs as an individual in our culture, separate from religion. I don't know if I have a perfect answer other than trying to pull it all together in terms of how we rationalize different things so that we do settle and that we don't become upset and we don't
lash out to others, as you were saying.
Well, that's it. That's where I'm headed with, And I think people are scared. I really honestly do. It's very obvious. Venus is very bright. It hasn't been bright like that in my lifetime. So we're, over 40 years here. And, and there's other things that are going on that are just not natural.
Well, listen, you look at our sun and you followed us enough. We just tried to show the data. Now, I don't blame people who sometimes lash out at us, because when I look at the data, Steve and I go at it. I mean, people don't know what happens behind the scenes, but Steve and I, we basically have this point counterpoint. And that allows me.
I call it a support group, really. That's
yeah, that is not AA. It's just that it's the fact that the data, when you begin to look at this, it does overwhelm the senses. It does.
Right.
Yes.
So, Dr. T, what can a person do? Maybe we'll go one or two more questions here. But what can a person do to be less dissonant, or more, maybe better stated, be aware of their own dissonance and be more sensitive to that? I guess I don't know if that's a solution, but what do you think?
Well, personally, I try to be. I try to be honest about how I'm feeling about whatever's going on. When I learn new information, Nibiru is what I'm talking about tonight. So when I'm learning new information about it, I try to go out and see if there's another answer that, may also explain something that we're all observing. Go to a different channel just to see, okay, well, are they saying the same thing, something different? I think we have to really take an active role in finding a balanced answer, not just one that either is a fear-prone type answer or one that presents data we want to see, and that's that may not be the best way either, to stick with one or the other. Rather, look at all the data that's being presented, whether it's Nibiru or it's in your own life. Realize what it's doing to you. You're angry, you're yelling at your kids or whatever the case is. Why are you doing that? Well, maybe, too much information. You've got to find a different source, find a different way to approach and resolve your kind of this discoherence between your ways of thinking about things and what you're being shown, and try to, and be honest about it. No longer lie to yourself, no longer make some sort of rationalization up. Look at it, figure out what's going on, and then try to strive to find a balance for yourself, which is very hard right now. Yeah.
That is so good. What can Steve and I do, Dr. T, to be able to, I feel, and Steve feels this way, we have a personal responsibility here.
Yes.
And it weighs on me at times. It does. And what can Steve and I do?
Well, actually, this is a great moment to say this then. What I would love to see, first off, I always love watching your episodes. And sometimes I come to the end of the episode and I know you guys finish it up or whatever the case may be. And it may be nice to say, just have like one summary slide at the end saying, this was the point of this is what we found. This is one way to think about it, and then leave a question open like you did tonight for me to answer, how do you think about it? Or, can you think of another way? Just something that way the individual has a way to settle their mind on what you just showed them. And maybe there isn't a good answer, but settled. Here's what I showed you. Here's what we tried to answer. Did we do it? Maybe, maybe not. And then maybe the comments that you get might come in more along like, yeah, you guys were on the nose with this one, or I think you were a long ways off. That way that at least the viewer, might have a better way of sharing information back with you in their comments, as well as thinking about what you just showed us.
I love this. In fact, I almost feel like I need to pay for this session.
Yeah, you're right. The therapy.
Good therapy, but no.
Yeah, really, man. All right.
Steve, I just want to close on this, that the fact that just being able to put a summary slide at the end of this. This is, I'm going to take this to heart, and I hope, Doctor, maybe depending on how this goes, I'd love to have you back again. I just think that you bring, I know this, I feel better. So I just want to say thank you, sir.
Oh, you are
Strangely,
welcome.
I feel better too. Thank you, Dr. T.
Yes, right, exactly, right. No, but it's wonderful talking to you guys, and I think you do have a responsibility, especially when you have 30 to 50,000 people who may join your channel, plus all those others who are visiting, subscribing, etc. You have a responsibility. You guys are very good about it, but I think if I had a way of summing it up every episode, just one quick, and a way to think about what I should do next, that would be a great contribution as well.
Well, we will. I'll give you our word. We shall do that.
Yep. Thank you.
Well, good night, and thank you everybody for joining us. Dr. T, PhD psychologist, here talking about the ins and outs of cognitive dissonance and how it might apply to some of the things we're seeing in our solar system, and then how the human process goes through processing it. Thanks again for joining us, and this is another episode of the Steiger-Olson Report, part of the Galactic News Network.